You are at a table on a Friday night, late enough that the candles have burned down unevenly, and someone has just told a story badly and everyone laughed anyway. Then a small voice, polite as a waiter, leans in and asks, "Are you enjoying this?" And you are not, quite, anymore. The question has walked into the room, and the room has quietly emptied. Notice how fast it happens. Half a second ago you were inside the evening, and now you are standing slightly behind yourself, watching it through glass, checking the reading. Nothing at the table changed. The wine is the same wine. The people are the same people. You are simply no longer among them, because part of you has stepped out to see how it is going, and that part took your presence with it when it left. Heidegger noticed something like this about a hammer. When you are hammering well, you do not see the hammer. You see the nail, the wood, the work. The tool goes transparent, becomes an extension of your hand, and disappears into what you are doing. It only becomes visible as an object, something with a weight and a handle and a shape you could inspect. At the moment it breaks or slips or misses. Looking at the hammer means you have stopped hammering. Your evening was working like that. It was transparent. You were not having an evening, you were talking to your friend, and the evening was the medium, not the object. And here the difference from the hammer matters, because a hammer does not care whether you look at it. Your evening does. It is not that you inspected something that had already broken. It is that the inspection is what broke it. Consider what the checking is actually made of. To ask whether you are enjoying this, you have to take your attention off the thing you are enjoying and turn it back on yourself. But attention was the whole substance of the enjoyment. There was no separate pleasure sitting somewhere in your chest to be measured. There was only your attention, poured out into a room and a face and a story. So the instrument you are measuring with is built from the same material as the thing you are measuring, and every reading you take is paid for out of the supply. It is a gauge that runs on the fuel in the tank it reads. Look at the needle long enough, and it will honestly tell you the tank is empty. John Stuart Mill found this out at 20 in the autumn of 1826. He had been raised as an instrument, engineered by his father to be a machine for reforming the world, and one day he put the question to himself directly. Suppose everything you are working for came true tomorrow. All the reforms, all the changes, the whole program, complete. Would you be happy? Something in him answered with total clarity, no. The bottom fell out. Years of gray followed. What he concluded afterwards was not that his goals were wrong, but that happiness was not the sort of thing that survives being asked about. Those only are happy, he decided, who have their minds fixed on something other than their own happiness. Aim past it and you arrive. Aim at it and it moves. The question is why you keep asking anyway. It is not idle curiosity, and it is not really a question. It is an audit. You have been trained patiently and from every direction to measure things, the steps, the sleep score, the hours, the year, and an evening that cost you a Friday and money and the whole weight of a life you only get once had better produce something, so you ask it for a receipt. The checking feels like diligence. It feels like the responsible thing a serious person does with a finite life. That is the disguise. Underneath it is fear, wearing the costume of wisdom. Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi spent decades asking people about the hours when they felt most alive, and the same strange detail kept surfacing. In those hours, the self went quiet. The climber on the rock, the musician inside the phrase, the surgeon, the child at the puzzle, none of them reported feeling happy at the time. They reported not thinking about themselves at all. The internal narrator, the one who grades and compares and asks how it is going, had simply gone off duty, and the happiness was discovered afterwards, on the way home. Which suggests something unnerving. Happiness may not be a feeling you have. It may be a particular arrangement of your attention, one where almost none of it is pointed at you. Here, the comforting version of this essay would tell you to stop checking, and here is where I will not. Because sometimes you ask the question on a Friday night, and the honest answer is no, and it is not the asking that ruined it. It is the job. It is the person across the table. It is the life. If you decide the checking is always the enemy, You have built yourself a beautiful machine for never hearing your own dissent, a way of dismissing every alarm as an alarm problem. So keep the question. But notice the difference between a question you ask once and answer and then do something about, and a question you ask again at 9 and again at 10 and again in the taxi home. The second one is not inquiry. A question that refuses every answer it is given has stopped being a question. It is a nervous tick that learned to speak in the voice of philosophy. What that tick wants is not information. It wants permission. Am I allowed to be here? Is this enough, given what it cost, given the other lives I could be living tonight? And no answer from inside the evening will ever satisfy it, because the demand underneath is that you prove, in real time with evidence, that you are not wasting your one existence. Nothing can prove that at 9 on a Friday. Not even a genuinely good Friday. You almost never know the good hours while you are in them. You find out later, sometimes much later, when a smell or a song hands one back to you, and you realize, with a small shock, that you were happy in a kitchen in a rented flat and had no idea. The verdict is not available from inside. It gets made by memory, slowly, out of material you were too busy living to grade. Which means the checking is trying to do at 9 on a Friday what only 10 years can do, and failing, and charging you the evening for the attempt. None of this is a technique, and it cannot be one, because deciding to stop checking is itself a check. What you can do is smaller and stranger. When the voice arrives and asks how you are doing, recognize it. Hear the tone it uses, the auditor's tone, and let it stand there unanswered, the way you let a phone ring. Then look back up. The candles have burned down unevenly. Someone is still telling the story badly. Someone is still telling the story badly. The room did not go anywhere. You did, and you can come back, and coming back is available roughly 1,000 times a night. If this gave you something to sit with, that is what this channel is for. Small shifts in how you see your own life. I will see you in the next one.